The woman's hands trembled as she pushed the bowl away. "I don't want to eat that," she whispered, voice small and ashamed. The kitchen, once bright with laughter and the smell of spices, felt like a courtroom. The living room beyond held the silence of people who had run out of words. He stopped mid-step in the hallway, the offer of being kind to his mother still warm on his tongue. For a second he watched her from the frame of the kitchen doorway, the neat lines of her face, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way she used to tuck stray hairs behind her ears. She was his mother. She had always been the one who made sure there was food on the table and clothes on his back. Now, decades later, it was she who recoiled from a simple plate. "It smells funny to me," she said, looking at the rice as if it might bite. "I'm not hungry." The wife moved as if to soothe, a practiced gesture, and then hesitated. Her hands hovered above the bowl and then retreated. She had come from a different life, one less forgiving in small domestic storms. She had learned to keep her opinions gentle, her corrections softer. But the younger man in the doorway felt a sudden pressure behind his ribs that made breath difficult. He stepped into the kitchen and closed the door softly behind him. He watched the exchange for a moment, letting the domestic choreography play out. His mother sat rigid in a chair, her shoulders narrowed as if to protect some inner injury. The wife, palms open, tried a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The rest of the household, the nanny and elderly housekeeper, a quiet driver who'd come in for a cup of tea, looked on like guests at a private disaster. "Don't push her," the wife murmured. "Maybe we should call the doctor. I can prepare something else." "No," the mother insisted. "I'm fine. I can't." Her eyes darted to the stairway as if measuring a distance. "I can't be a burden." The man's heart broke at the words. He crossed the kitchen in quick strides and sat across from her, the table between them like a thin, defensible border. He lowered his voice, steady as an anchor. "Mom, what is it? What's wrong with the food?" She laughed, a brittle, unhappy sound. "It's not the food. It's everything. The way she looks at me. The way she offers it like a test. I didn't expect this from your wife." He blinked. For a heartbeat his mind spun with a dozen unlikely defenses and outraged retorts. But he felt the heat of embarrassment, the awkward knowledge of the two lives that now had to fold into one another. He had married into wealth, into a life studded with appointments and polo matches and shuttle services. He had chosen a partner who fit that life, polished, discreet, efficient. She had been nothing like his mother. And now, in the raw domestic light of a kitchen, the collision had begun. "Mom," he said, "this is my wife. She only wants to take care of you." "Care?" his mother repeated. She cares the way you care, with schedules and reminders. She cares like a manager. She doesn't know how to feed a soul." The wife flinched as if struck. Her hands folded into her lap. "I only meant to help," she said. "I cooked what I thought you'd like. I'm sorry." Silence fell. The man saw his mother soften for an instant, then harden again. "It's not that I'm ungrateful," she said slowly. There are things I remember. In my day we ate the food we had. We didn't waste things. We didn't throw meals away." "Mom, it's okay to be picky at your age," he said quickly, "the way men try to fix things with simple tools. We'll make something different. How about soup? Chicken? Anything you want." She waved a thin hand. "No. I don't want to make trouble." It was then that the man noticed the change in his mother's breathing, a tightness that looked like someone trying to fold themselves into a slimmer, less intrusive silhouette. One of the housekeepers in the doorway shifted, whispering to the driver. The air felt heavy with unasked questions. He reached for her hand, the skin papery and warm. "Mom," he said softer, "you don't have to pretend. Tell me what's really going on." She looked up then, and for a moment the woman he remembered returned. The same bright eyes, the little crinkle at the corner of her mouth, the stubbornness that had gotten him through school, through the minor cruelties of being a boy from a small neighborhood suddenly introduced to big house manners. "I don't want to eat that because it came from her," she confessed at last. She doesn't belong at our table." The room seemed to contract. The man's mouth opened to protest, to point out how hurtful the comment was, how unfair. But he remembered an afternoon years ago when he had watched his mother stitch a torn pocket until there was barely a sign of the tear. He remembered late nights when she sat watching him study under a single lamp, the hems of her life worn down by other people's needs. She had loved him in ways that were fierce and cost her. She had also loved him in ways that refused to change. His expression shifted from anger to something else, not capitulation but negotiation. He understood the power of belonging, of ritual. He also understood the price of silence. He had promised himself, when his fortunes began to turn, that he would not let the distance between his past and present become a canyon. He owed her that much. He stood up slowly. "Bring the bowl back," he said to the wife, and his voice had that firm, quiet authority that had convinced men in boardrooms and crowds. She obeyed, a small ripple of surprise passing through her face. He took the bowl, set it on the counter, and then did something that startled everyone. He picked up his mother's spoon and fed her a single careful mouthful. No fanfare, no announcement. He fed her like a son who remembered the nights she had fed him when he was sick, like a man resetting the balance in a room that had tilted. The spoon touched her lips and she closed her eyes. A single tear escaped and tracked down the line of her cheek. "Eat," he said, and his tone was gentle but unflinching. "It's good." She nodded. The bite slid down her throat as if surgery had been performed on the barrier between them. For a moment the three people at the table existed in a small orbit. The son, the mother, the wife, each testing the other's gravity. But the wife's eyes flashed then, not with anger but with something more complex. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping the tile. "You shouldn't humiliate me like that," she said. "I only wanted to help." Humiliate wasn't the right word, and yet the man felt the sting. He had not meant to shame her. He had meant to bridge something else. "I didn't humiliate you," he said. "I asked you to bring it because she was part of our family. We can do things differently. We can learn." "But you didn't respect my effort," the wife insisted. "You didn't let me try." He looked at her, really looked, taking in the tight line of her mouth, the way she pressed her lips when she was trying to be brave. "I respect you," he said. "I respect that you tried. But there's a history here I don't think you understand. This meal is a symbol to her. You didn't mean to make her feel small, but it happened." Her face folded in on itself, sudden and raw. "I didn't want to make her feel small. I wanted to make her happy." "Then try," he said simply. "Ask her what she likes. Ask her about the things she remembers. Not everything can be planned with a spreadsheet." She paused, and then, in a voice that had lost its earlier sharpness, she said, "Okay. What do you like, ma'am? What would make you happy to eat?" His mother blinked, startled by the change in tone. She had seen this willingness before in strangers who wanted something from her. But the question was plain and courteous. Her shoulders slackened. "I used to like plain rice with a little ghee," she said slowly. "And lentils. And sometimes when there was a treat, we'd have fried fish on holidays." The wife nodded, pen and pad already forming in the rhythm of her service. "I'll make lentils. Fried fish for tomorrow if you'd like. Tonight, would you try the soup? Or shall I make the rice?" Her face had an earnestness now that made the son ache with relief. "Rice?" his mother decided after a beat. "But little salt. And no fancy spices. Just rice." "Done," the wife said. "I'll make it right away." She set to work with a concentration that somehow softened the edges of her. The man watched them both, his mother at the table, accepting, and his wife in the kitchen, moving with a competence that now included deference. The rest of the household resumed their work as if relieved the moment had passed into something useful. Later, after the meal had been eaten and plates cleared, the man found his mother in the small sitting room where an old fan moved the air lazily. She sat in her favorite chair, a shawl over her knees, hands folded. He sat beside her and waited. "I shouldn't have said that," she murmured, eyes on the floor. "I know she means well." He shook his head. "No. You were honest. That's what I wanted. I don't want either of you to pretend. I want you to try." She looked at him then, and the expression that crossed her face was a mix of gratitude and grief for shared loss. "Promise me something," she said. "Anything. That you won't forget the people who taught you how to live," she said. "Not the money, not the house, not the car. Remember the hands that fed you when you were small." He put his arm around her shoulders. "I remember," he said. "And I'll make sure she remembers too." When he returned to the kitchen, his wife met his eyes. She looked tired but steadier than before. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. He considered that. Maybe he had, he thought. Maybe something had been repaired, another wedge removed before it widened. "We both did," he said. "We have to keep at it." They stood together at the counter, two people learning a marriage that had to hold two histories. Outside, the city hummed on with its indifferent energy, markets and traffic and people making daily choices. But inside the house a small peace had been negotiated. Weeks passed. There were other frictions. A misunderstanding about the schedule of a family dinner, a comment made by a distant aunt that stung, a birthday present that went unwitnessed because of corporate travel. But the wife made lentils like his mother had requested. The mother tried a new salad and declared it tolerable. Each small attempt was a brick laid in a bridge. Sometimes they missed. One evening, months later, the wife came into the room with a small wrapped box. She handed it to the mother with a slightly nervous smile. "I thought of you when I saw this," she said. The mother unwrapped it with curious fingers. Inside was a set of small sewing needles with a tiny wooden case, the kind of thing a homemaker might prize. It was simple, not expensive, but it was thoughtful in a way that bypassed money. The mother turned it over, feeling the smoothness of the wood. Her eyes filled. "You didn't have to," she said. "I wanted to," the wife replied. "You taught me how to make a table feel like a home. I wanted to thank you." The man's chest tightened. He watched as his mother placed the little case next to her teacup and then reached to squeeze the wife's hand. "Thank you," she said, plain as a bell. That night, as the house settled and the lights were dimmed, the man lay awake for a long time. He thought about inheritance. Not the legal kind, but the small, stubborn inheritance of taste and habit and tenderness. He thought about the immense, quiet labor of those who raise children and the awkward, patient work of learning to belong to someone who has a past.